Why exactly did this peculiar painting cause such a scandal in the early 1860s? Was it because of the nude woman or the finely dressed gentleman who accompanied her? Or perhaps it was because of the background in which we can see another scarcely dressed woman taking a bath. In this video, I'll take a closer look at Le Déjeuner-sur-l'herbe, or the Luncheon on the Grass by Édouard Manet. You'll learn exactly why this unusual painting became a turning point in not only the artist's career, but also in art history. When I studied art in college, which was, I must admit, quite a while ago, I remember that an entire section was dedicated to Manet and Monet. Both men revolutionized art in the mid-19th century, and there are several reasons for this. Édouard Manet was born on January 23, 1832, into an upper-class Parisian family. The mansion he grew up in at the Rue Bonaparte emphasizes how wealthy his family really was. His mother, Eugénie Désirée Fournier, was the daughter of a diplomat and the goddaughter of the future King of Sweden and Norway, Charles Bernadotte. His father, Auguste Manet, was a judge who envisioned a career in law for his son. His uncle, Edmond Fournier, changed these plans as he frequently took his young nephew to the Louvre. This sparked his interest in art, something that he never let go of in his lifetime. His parents, and especially his father, didn't like the idea that his son would become a painter, and this showed. One of his first major paintings, which was exhibited at the 1861 Paris Salon, perfectly highlights this. Just check out the look on his father's face. His unhappiness literally drips off the canvas. Granted, this also had to do with his mother's illness at the time. Over a decade earlier, in a futile attempt to change his son's mind, he boarded him on a ship to Rio de Janeiro. He secretly hoped that Édouard would become interested in a respected career in the French Navy. Manet wasn't a gifted student, and he failed the exam to join the Navy twice. This finally convinced his father Auguste that his son might possess other talents. Then again, carving out a traditional career wasn't a necessity for the young Manet, because his family was extremely wealthy. He studied art during the 1850s, and during this period he was trained as an academic painter. This surely helped him develop his skills, but travels to Italy and especially the Netherlands had a much greater impact on his mature style. Dutch portrait painter Frans Hals became his greatest idol, especially the way in which he painted common people. These snapshots of everyday life became a recurring subject throughout Manet's career. His academic teacher almost fell off his chair when Édouard showed him a portrait of a drunkard titled The Absinthe Drinker. In 1856, he already opened up his studio because he didn't like the academic style he learned at the École des Beaux-Arts. He initially painted in the realism style that had become popular at the time because of Gustave Courbet. His loose brushstrokes and elements that almost appeared to be unfinished, however, were unlike anything he had learned at the prestigious French Academy. This becomes clear in his first major painting titled Music in the Tuileries, which he completed in 1862, the year before he painted the Luncheon on the Grass. Notice how the people in the foreground are realistically depicted, while those in the background almost blend into the landscape. Apart from the unconventional style, there was something else that defined Manet's work and why he was so influential. Music in the Tuileries was Manet's first major attempt to depict life as it really was in the 1860s. This became his career motto as he continued to feature everyday Parisians in his paintings. This doesn't explain, however, why he decided to depict a naked woman together with two dressed gentlemen while having a picnic in a dense forest, but I'll come to that in just a minute. Going back to his style, he refused to paint in the manner he learned at the academy. Instead of adding multiple layers of paint onto a dark background, he painted directly on a white canvas. This style, known as alla prima, was adopted by the Impressionists, and it allowed them to experiment with natural light. This might seem like a small tweak, but it was incredibly significant for future generations of modern painters. During the 1860s, he befriended numerous colleagues, including Berthe Morisot, who later married his brother Eugène. He also hung out with Edgar Degas, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, and several other upcoming artists. He was a bit older than all of these painters, and because of his strong personality, he became the leader of the so-called Batignolles group. They were named after the Parisian district where they met frequently in the local taverns. This was also where Manet lived at the time. The main take is that Édouard Manet formed the bridge between realism and academic art and Impressionism. Therefore, he played a major role in the development of modern art. This brings us to the Luncheon on the Grass, a painting he completed in 1863. Unlike the other Impressionists, Manet continued to try and get his paintings accepted to the Paris Salon throughout his career. He made his debut at the prestigious art exhibition in 1861 with the portrait of his parents and a painting titled The Spanish Singer. This work, which was inspired by the portraits of Spanish painter Diego Velázquez, was well received by art critics. To his own surprise, his now world-famous Luncheon on the Grass was rejected for the Paris Salon of 1863. It was, however, exhibited at the Salon des Refusés of that year, an exhibition dedicated to paintings that didn't make it to the Salon. It was the first year of this exhibition, made possible by a decree signed by Emperor Napoleon III himself. At the time, it was held at the former Palace of Industry on the site of the modern-day Grand Palais. So why exactly were contemporary viewers shocked when they laid eyes upon Manet's painting? After all, the Paris Salon was full of paintings featuring nude men and women, right? The answer lies in the woman's gaze, which is pointing directly towards the viewer. Unlike the other paintings featuring nudity, this painting featured a real woman, not some idealized mythological or allegorical figure. As I already mentioned, Manet often visited the Louvre in his native Paris, and therefore it's likely that he was inspired by this painting. Titled The Pastoral Concert, it was completed in 1509 by Italian painter Titian, and it also featured a nude woman sitting next to two dressed men. Unlike in Manet's painting, the woman doesn't stare towards the viewer though. It's believed that the woman in the foreground was Victorine Meurent, a painter and Manet's favorite model. She's also believed to be the model for Manet's equally famous and scandalous painting at the time titled Olympia. She casually sits next to two fully dressed men, which is a rather uncommon sight. The men have been identified as well, and the man on the right was likely Édouard's brother Eugène. The man in the middle was his brother-in-law, Dutch sculptor Ferdinand Leenhoff. When Le Dejeuner-surlherbe was first exhibited, the painting was titled Le Bain, or The Bath. This puts more attention on the scene in the background, which depicts a semi-naked woman taking a bath in a shallow pond. It's likely that Manet's aim was to depict prostitution at the Bois de Boulogne, the immense park on the western outskirts of Paris. For Parisians in the 1860s, this interpretation might have been pretty obvious, as everybody knew about this, even though it was a highly taboo subject. This also means that the woman's gaze is an inviting one, and it made the men who visited the exhibition with their wives pretty nervous. Apart from its subject matter, the sheer size of this work was another element that increased the shock value for viewers. It measures 208 by 264 centimeters or 81 by 104 inches, a size usually only reserved for academic art at the time. The large version is however the second version of this painting, as he created a smaller one about half this size earlier. This roughly finished painting is housed at the Courtauld, the collection of the University of London, which you can admire at Somerset House. Speaking of roughly finished paintings, the large version isn't exactly a polished work of art either. The subject matter was the main point of criticism at the time, but art critics didn't exactly appreciate the fact that many parts of the work appeared to be unfinished. To conclude this video, I think it's clear that Manet's main aim was to shock viewers, something that worked rather well. After all, he was only an emerging artist at the time who tried to make a name for himself. A bit of controversy surely helped him because, unlike many traditional art critics, the younger generation instantly admired his style. Unlike Renoir or Monet, he also didn't necessarily have to sell his paintings to make a living, as he managed to live off his father's inheritance during the early phase of his career. This didn't mean that he didn't try though, as he put a huge price tag of 25,000 francs on his Luncheon on the Grass. He never got this amount, as it sold for just 2,600 francs in 1878, about 15 years after it was completed. The notion that he didn't have to paint for art critics, but for the general public is perhaps the most important take. It's because of this that he became such an inspiration for emerging modern artists, something that changed the course of art history indefinitely. Today, you can admire Manet's influential painting at the beautiful Musée d'Orsay in Paris. The former railway building of the Gare d'Orsay was repurposed in the late 1980s. It holds an incredible collection of Impressionist and post-Impressionist paintings, including Manet's fascinating Luncheon on the Grass.